Now that persistent degassing activity has been interrupted by a series of explosions. On April 9th, we had our second explosion, which is a small explosive eruption, even smaller than the March 19th, quite a bit smaller. But it was associated with an enlargement of the vent here. You can see here. And it threw out lithic blocks and spatter. It was again smaller than the March 19th explosion. April 16th, there was the third explosive eruption, and it basically just dusted the area in pink ash, even smaller than the April 19th explosion. Around mid-April, we got to see something. Something started that is kind of interesting. This is a day's worth of seismic tremor at the summit. So in late March, we had relatively steady tremor here. As you can see, it's interrupted by a few small earthquakes or rock falls. But in mid-April, the seismic tremor changed. And we got to see these little cigars started appearing. And this is called episodic tremor, as opposed to the steady tremor here. And these cigars would last for a few minutes, and then it'd be separated by a couple minutes, and the next cigar would come and last for a few minutes. By late June, these cigars had turned into full spindles, and very pronounced tremor during these tremor bursts, and very little activity in the intervening periods. Very little tremor, that is. And so the question is, at the time when we started seeing this, is what is this episodic tremor? And fortunately, the tremor was not the only data set that we were acquiring that showed this episodic behavior. So we had some help from other data sets. And many of you have probably seen this. Standing on the Jagger Overlook, you can see, sped up 100 times here, that the glow at the vent has fluctuated very dramatically. And when it's at its brightest, basically, it corresponds with one of those tremor bursts perfectly. And when it's dark, it's in that intervening period between the tremor burst. And we also were collect high-frequency temperature data at the vent, and that also showed a perfect correlation with the tremor bursts. The interpretation at that time, even though we didn't get a clear view, we never had a clear view of the lava surface, is that we interpreted this as a process called gas pistoning. So what's gas pistoning? Well, it's actually, gas pistoning was first described by HVO geologists at Mauna Ulu in the East Rift Zone in the late 60s. And one model to explain, the one I prefer, is one where you have, it's a cyclic behavior where you have a crust developing over a standing magma column, and you have gas continuously rising in that conduit. And the crust develops and seals in the gas, and you get gas accumulation, which leads to a rise in the lava level. And at some point, the strength of that crust is exceeded, gas bursts out, and lava along the side drains back. And a process like this was observed firsthand at Mauna Ulu. And then the cycle returns. And so we were just inferring, based on a number of these data sets, that the same process, this gas pistoning process, was happening in Halemaumau, but we did not have a direct view of the lava surface yet. So we didn't have a direct view, so what I'm going to show is gas pistoning at Pu'o. Gas pistoning hasn't just happened at Mauna Ulu and presumably in the Halemaumau. It's happened in a number of places, and some of the best observations we have recorded on film were at Pu'o. So this is some gas pistoning, a number of cycles happening in June 2006. And keep an eye on the glow, the level of glow on the back wall there. And you can see what's happening is that the level is fluctuating, and when it rises is when there's a crust that presumably is sealing in this gas. And when it reaches its height, it basically erupts and throws out spatter and gas and drops. And you can see how the glow fluctuates along with this cyclic behavior. But at this point, it was just inference that it was happening in Halemaumau. Now, we've talked about how there's that persistent degassing plume that's white, dominated by water vapor and other volcanic gases, relatively ash poor. But occasionally, degassing activity can be interrupted by some ash-rich phases. And here's an event that happened August 31st. And you can see a nice white plume here, and something happens, and now it's brown, and actually there's some flaring up. These rapid changes to ash-rich phases are associated with seismic signals that are indicative of rockfalls. So the interpretation is that you have a small collapse of the conduit wall. Why this flaring happens, it could be, for instance, a block punctures the crust and results in the expulsion of some gas from the lava column.